Brother, are you all right?
No, I am not all right. I just shared a bottle of Kanar with Damar. That rhymes.
You're drunk.
Of course I'm drunk.
Good afternoon and evening, and actually I think it's even morning in some places. Huh. It's almost like the planet is not an infinite flat plane. Fascinating. Welcome to this week's installment of Kanar with Damar, where, yes, the Kanar is still available, but we're going to go a different route. So, for those who actually paid attention to the title and description, yes, we have quite the existential question to ask everyone. Of the multitude of universes out there, which verse is the best verse? Some people might know where my loyalty lies, just in the way I phrased the question.
You can't take the sky from me.
Not at all. It's almost like if I managed to find a way to end up in a loyalist bar on a particular day, no matter what.
It seems to happen every year.
It's just odd how that always happens, isn't it? Which, yes, at some point I am going to schedule a day where, yeah, in the Discord server we will have Firefly playing the entire day. The actual series. Yeah. Not sure what day yet.
May have to take that day off and sit in through that, because that is a worthy endeavor.
So, here's the question for everyone. I just randomly picked some of the sci-fi franchises that I do watch on occasion in both the thumbnail and as you can see on the screen here. The question is, which ones are which? And a few of them should be rather apparent.
I'll admit I've only got 3.
Anamorphic Mind, we may actually finish, depending on how long it takes, we'll probably end up finishing with the movie. Although, the movie could have wrapped up some of the stories better.
I've told you that I've got it right here, Jared. We could make this an episode. I've got the comic book, Serenity, The Shepherd's Tale.
See? Yep.
Right there. And it is written by Joss Whedon. So this is not a knockoff.
So it would
This
actually...
is Joss Whedon.
So it'd be genuine beta canon and only beta canon because it hadn't been put to film. All right, then.
Yeah. And this, I haven't read it. I pulled it out the last time we talked about it. But this does go into the history of Shep.
Yeah, because for those who don't know, there were a couple instances where he knew more than a shepherd should. To the point where simply mentioning an ID number to a particular officer caused a whole bunch of shit to stop and go hush-hush. So, yeah, we're going to have to dive into that. Maybe in the latter half of this, we could do that. We'll see.
Well, yeah, I was thinking maybe even if we could do it over on the Discord, I'll see if I can find the digital version of this, and maybe we could read through it together.
That would actually work really good too. So, see, people, there are benefits to being on the Discord server because stuff like this happens and actually gets talked about.
Now, let's see. I'm going to pull up my comment in the Discord server and see if I can actually say it with a straight face. No, I can't. As much of a Star Wars fan as I am, I cannot say what I put in the Discord in our internal chat here, but I will say it anyways. We could talk about Star Wars as the most superior sci-fi. Yeah, no, I couldn't even say that with a straight face. So, or in the case of the chat, type it with a straight face. So.
Yeah, but notice that one's not represented. The question. So we've had a few people get a couple of the assets. Some of them are iconic. Yes, the Firefly class ship is unmistakably from that show. The TARDIS. If you don't know what franchise and what universe that's from, oh boy, do you have some homework to do.
And yes, Harry, I'm well aware of that because it's not what this is actually about.
See, this is more just a completely subjective evaluation of all of them because there really is such stark differences between each of the franchises when you look at it that you can't just limit it to a comparison one to the other and call it that. There's so much more nuance to that.
I don't necessarily want to like jump out with my biases or anything, but you might be able to guess which series I'm a big fan of, or
you really shouldn't be showing your wife's toys out there to the public.
or which one of these little guys is your favorite. I'm actually missing the most recent one, but yeah. I would say that I'm a fan of that particular genre.
But here, so one person has actually gotten top middle right, another person has gotten top left right, but I've not seen anyone mention the lower left. I wonder if people are actually able to tell what that one is.
No, there's a bottom left in there. Leon called it.
No, Leon called top left. I didn't see. Oh, yep, he did get both. All right, so yes, for those who are only listening and not really looking, so we have Moya from Farscape. We have the Babylon 5 space station. We have the TARDIS in the place that actually, it might end up staying there for a while. I don't know. We'll see. And then we also have the Starbug from Red Dwarf. So, Harry M.S., so is this a Star Wars or Star Trek thing? Those two universes are so different that comparing them is like comparing apples and strawberries. Yeah, no, it's not just Star Wars. It's all of them. Because, I'll admit it, Farscape really did fill the void for me initially after the end of DS9 and Voyager, before Enterprise was a thing. And I really think Farscape got a raw deal. Although, maybe I should have gotten the Chop Eye and put that on here too. See, that's the thing, is when you look at sci-fi as a larger conglomerate, there are a lot of franchises that could pique your interest. Now, Stargate did have its campy episodes.
Don't they all, though?
They really do.
Yeah, every series does.
It's part of the Writers Guild Association. You have to write X number of campy episodes per series, I guess, or per show, I should say. Not to confuse with the British series versus our season, so,
Yeah. Ooh, Andromeda is another good one, and I did watch Andromeda a bit when it was initially on air, but I watched it more afterwards, even more recently when it's been on streaming services. As that was one that actually showed that Roddenberry wasn't just about Trek. Oh God, we're going back to this.
Well, they're all interconnected somehow.
I'm sorry. What did I start?
It is true, though, when you really look at it, you have all those permutations of it. And yes, Google moderator team, we cannot ignore Lex either. Except here's another thing. I wasn't supposed to know about that show when it initially hit the air, but I did anyways. Here's a good question. Would the show Eureka count?
Ooh, see, now we are burning through Eureka right now. We've seen it before, but my wife has started it and she's getting the kids into it. Yeah, that is a sci-fi series. It is deep enough down the rabbit hole of non-reality that you have to consider it sci-fi. Plus, they went to fucking space.
Yeah, and some would say that would be a major criteria for a sci-fi series, but I would counter with a different one that I don't think anyone would deny was a sci-fi series either, and it was one that I actually rather quite enjoyed. Fringe.
Never got into it. Like, to be honest, I never really tried to get into it, so I think, that was 2006 or so that came out?
Yeah, mid-2000s. And it was only around for a few years.
Musk, Eureka went to the alternative timeline in season 2, though.
Yeah, and that's where I give Eureka as, that's sci-fi. It's more... Okay, so I refer to Star Wars as science fantasy. There's enough of a science aspect to it for it to be lumped in with the rest of sci-fi, but it has that fantasy aspect to it too, where you can't deny it. I would put Eureka as a different as a sci-fi sitcom.
I would say it's but it would, if you were going science fiction, science fantasy, it would be in the science fantasy side, because it is far enough away from reality that I don't think you could say science fiction straight up as you would with Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well,
there's just too many unpossible things.
Well, you definitely can count Fringe in as sci-fi because the simple fact it's got Leonard Nimoy. Case closed.
Well, wait. Does that make The Simpsons sci-fi?
Yes, at least that one episode. Come on, that's a catchy tune they have in that one too.
True. Yeah, you got a point on that one. Ooh, Muskegon
Warehouse 13, yeah.
Yeah, Muskegon
Warehouse 13's in the same boat as Eureka.
Yeah, enough of the implausibility for it to fall under the greater umbrella of sci-fi, but definitely flirting with that fantasy side when you look at who they had playing H.G. Wells.
Who was it? I haven't seen that in a long time.
Oh, you don't remember her?
No, I don't.
Hold on. We're looking at Warehouse 13.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yes, Rodent No Last Name had the same thought at the same time. Eureka is sci-fi, so is Warehouse 13 for the same reasons.
Oh, Jamie Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And the way they
How
played
could you
that
forget
off,
about this? How did you forget that face?
Oh, go ahead and click on it now. Yeah. How could you forget her? And the accent.
It's been a long time. And would you add Futurama to the list of sci-fi? Futurama is in a category of its own.
Yeah.
But it would be in under the umbrella because
Oh yes, it is, but it's you can't compare it to anything else.
Defiance. I forgot all about that show.
You know, I will say this, of stuff that is being produced and aired now, The Expanse is definitely getting a lot of points in its favor.
I haven't watched the most recent season.
Well, to me, what really helps The Expanse is the realistic nature in the way they have crafted that world, the realm that they're actually portraying. It is far and away the most scientifically accurate that I've seen to date. To the point where when ships are actually entering battle with each other and they're screaming in, they're not hitting brakes and stopping. They're actually doing a flip maneuver and then firing the main engines to slow back down.
Yeah, and I did love in the opening sequences on what asteroid are they living on, and they had birds that were hovering.
Yeah.
Oh, Google moderator team. What about the Orville?
That is in a tough area with this conversation for one reason. It's the Trek we deserve and the Trek that we have wanted.
It so is. And if anybody has not watched the Orville, seriously watch it. And after you've watched the first season, it feels like dumb, silly, stupid Star Trek. But for as dumb, silly, stupid as it was in season 1, it becomes just as much serious in season 2. And it actually starts taking on heavier topics. I absolutely love the Orville.
Yeah, and that's where I can't wait for new episodes to be available of it, because a lot of people don't realize McFarlane is just as much of a nerd as we are, but he's also has that artistic flair to it as well. I mean, when you look at some of the series that he's come up with, yeah, there is a lot of juvenile humor, but he knows how to make a show that has staying power. They failed to kill Family Guy. American Dad is still going strong. About the only mistakes on that side of it that he's made is trying to actually center a show around Cleveland. Not exactly the character I would choose for a spinoff, but as they even said in Family Guy when it was pointed out, well, what about me? Why can't I get a spinoff? Quagmire, you're a rapist. Boom. End of the end of the show. So he does have enough knowledge to know how to play the game to have a show create a fan base and keep going despite networks wanting to get rid of them. I mean, how many times was Family Guy canceled and then brought back?
Mm-hmm.
And then...
be honest, guys. You guys are both Navy, so I'm Army, so I don't have, on the boat type experience to compare with the Orville. But which series is more accurate to how the average day-to-day life would be on a ship? The Orville or any of the Star Treks? Because I know in the Army, we're dumb as fuck and we do stupid shit. That's why I think the Orville is more accurate to how reality would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's apt. The problem with trying to compare Star Trek to the Orville as far as the way crews act and everything is Star Trek was setting up an idea of I don't want to say a utopia, but a more perfect society than what we have now, or at the time of each season or series airing.
I can see that. I could accept that. the Orville started off with the premise of this is how it would really happen.
Yeah, being more realistic. If our timeline were to progress to that point, here's a more correct representation of what it would be like. And that's where a lot of the humor comes in. That's where, yes, there are technical differences, Justin Frank, so they can't say that it's an IP infringement between the Orville and Star Trek. They don't use nacelles on the ships the way Star Trek does. They actually have changed the terminology, and they haven't really gone into too much detail about how the FTL travel works in that landscape. So you have that bits where Orville is a wonderful homage to original and golden era Trek. So original being the original series, and the golden era being TNG, DS9, and it gotta throw Voyager into it as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
as much as you don't want to.
Rodent nails it. Orville is the best Trek since Galaxy Quest.
Yes. Wait a minute, I hit the button! Why isn't it stopping? 2, 1, and then it stops. Oh, right, because it never stopped before 1 on the show.
And I love how they modeled how the consoles actually operated based upon what they observed on the show. I've been playing Star Trek Bridge Crew recently, and you can jump between the original Enterprise, and then another. I don't know if it's next gen. I think it's next gen era ship, and the original Enterprise. It's fucking buttons and knobs. Yep. I'm terrified to try and jump into that thing and fly it because everything is buttons and knobs. There's not a joystick to fly it. There's a button up and a different button down.
Well, that's why the NX-01 is better, because it shows that they actually do use a joystick once in a while.
Yeah.
Well, that, and then you have your manual override on the Enterprise E. Do we not want to talk about Nemesis and that? And how it took until after that for them to consider putting seatbelts on the bridge chairs. Although technically they did have them before, back at the movie era. The arms of the chairs, if you actually watch closely, they flip down to go over to the lap. Those are actually supposed to be a restraint system.
Yeah. I remember in an interview with Shatner about Generations, I think it was. The set for Generations, the opening scene, that was the first set that moved. Everything else was just a camera shake. Mm-hmm. So as they were filming that destruction sequence, or the attack sequence, as they were entering the rift, the entire set shook, and Shatner actually went down. And one of the crew, one of the other like minions that was on set after they called cut, they go over there and help Shatner up, and was like all apologetic, like, "Sir, are you okay? 'Cause for a man for your age taking a fall that hard, we need to make sure you're okay." Apparently, Shatner was very offended by that ageist comment.
Oh, he's still. That was part of it. How much of the character was him, and how much of the character was what he was just thought Kirk should be, especially in the deleted scene from that. Which wait. We need to stop this because we cannot talk about Gayo's favorite Trek movie until he's with us in 2 weeks.
Wait, no, we can. We don't have to talk about the full movie. We don't have to give full critique on it.
No, because this is all going to come up in the next episode, and yeah, we'll shelf that for for in 2 weeks. Which by the way,
should I start working on screenshots now? How many are we aiming for? Like 500 screenshots, 1,000?
Let's just try to keep it relevant, and also there is a GIF that you would have to put in at a particular point It's the GIF that I posted in our background chat that pretty much sums up the entire movie.
Yeah.
And once you see it, I just gotta know, do you agree or not?
Pretty much.
So, but yeah, back to the other franchises. Yes, The Expanse has gotten huge marks and a following for the realism that it's been portraying and having that darker, grittier, more realistic approach to what would actually be going on. Where is it actually looking like we as a society, we as a species currently are headed? But I think that's also part of the problem when you look at sci-fi in general, because you have these later iterations of Trek that we are dealing with right now that are trying to mimic that sort of approach in order to maintain and bolster their fandom. It's like I've said when we were doing the Star Trek Picard viewing parties in the server. There was one episode in particular, if I remember right, it was episode 3, where Star Trek Picard came off as trying to be the Pokemon of sci-fi. There were elements of so many different shows in that one episode that it came off as though they're trying to appeal to all these different types of genres to get their fandom interested in the show. And sorry, you don't pander like that. If you want a fandom, create a good fucking show that people are going to want to watch and talk about in a positive light. Yes, okay, I got to agree with Rodent No Last Name. Yes, that scene in particular, it made me laugh, but then it made me cry at the same time, and not because of how hard I was laughing. He says, I like the science accuracy in The Expanse until the open-top coffee mug in 0G. Yeah, someone didn't do their research on what it would actually end up looking like before they planned out the effects.
But I love little tiny mistakes like that.
I didn't know JM worked for The Expanse.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of, did you guys see that video that DKG Customs made?
I think I might have.
I haven't watched it yet, but it is on the list to watch.
Jay, you're gonna love what he does, because at one point he actually uses footage that Red's filmed, and then he played with it, and it was fucking phenomenal.
I still got to pull down a bunch of JM, video clips so I can add them to my remix video.
But so here. But so we know where your primary loyalty on the answer to the question is going to go, Furball. But my question is, why? Why would you go with the madman with the blue box?
I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I am a fan of the older ones. I was not a fan. I was oblivious to it when I was young. I've gone back and watched 80% or so of the older series. The modern versions, whenever ask who's your favorite, everybody says Tennant. I'm actually a diehard fan of Matt Smith's Doctor. Beginning to end, you can feel the empathy and the emotions from him. And and I've said this on here before, from when Matt Smith comes out of the box sideways until the end of the Amy and Rory timeline, to me, is some of the best story arc in any sci-fi series, because it makes you emotionally invested. For that particular series, they absolutely nailed making you emotionally invested and caring about the characters. Whereas there's been other series where they've got other companions that if they bumped them off at any particular day, you probably wouldn't care too much until the next, who's the next companion going to be? For that story arc, they absolutely nailed it. And that really hooked me. And I want the modern Doctor now to be more like that. And they're failing at making me want more of the companions.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with Muskegon. Matt Smith, especially early Smith with Amy, and then when Rory came along after, his adventures with the Pawns. Matt Smith's version of the Doctor had a quirkiness to him similar to Baker.
Yeah.
And that was part of what was endearing with Matt Smith's version, but also, like you were saying, with that overall progression through the seasons, through the series with Matt Smith, you got a progression, you got actual development that was recognizable with the Doctor that you didn't really see as consistently with Tennant. But
you got a little bit of it with Rose, but still not as deep.
Yes, it definitely, there was more of that connection with them, which also was masterfully shown when the Pawns aren't there anymore, and the Doctor's just doing his thing, and he's just hanging out up in the clouds. And it took that version of Clara to say, no, you're not doing this. You're not doing it alone. That's not how you're gonna work. But when it comes to the new vintage of Doctor Who, out of those, I agree, those three were the pinnacle and were great to bring the series back to the forefront like it was originally. I will give them that. I have separate criticisms for the Capaldi and the current Jodie Whittaker era, which we'll get to that in a moment. But when looking at Eccleston, when going 9, 10, 11, Eccleston, Tennant, and Smith, I really enjoyed Smith because that's actually, my wife and I started watching the newer era of Doctor Who with Smith. But we went back and watched the others. I wish Eccleston had gotten more than one season.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think he would not have been as quirky, but it would have been a different feel for the Doctor. It would have been nice to see more of that Doctor. And honestly, looking back on it, there was no way this was planned. But if you could pick which one of the modern Doctors, and you didn't know when and where they came in, which one of them just came off of being the War Doctor? It was Eccleston.
Yeah, you could tell.
Yeah.
When you actually look at it, and that's where I was going, is when you have that microcosm of change and growth in just Smith, but now add in 10 and 9 ahead of it, and you get more of that growth, more of that change of the personalities. And it makes sense when you look at the grander scale, because you went from the series, a break, and then you had the that War Doctor movie that they did right before the Time War. And then you have that gap until Eccleston comes back. And so you could definitely see how Eccleston's version of the Doctor is that brooding, realist, really dour, but still has the childish, playful side. But you can definitely tell that something happened in that gap to really just make him shut down on a lot of things. And Rose helped him open back up. And then when he regenerated, now you have Tennant, who's almost the overcompensation while trying to ignore everything that happened that created the instance of the Ninth Doctor.
Yeah.
And then you have Smith, you have that version of the Doctor that starts out and actually, I've accepted it. Because I forget which character it was. I don't think it was Clara, but it was during her tenure that it is actually pointed out that, hey, we have the one who forgot, Tennant, and the one who has accepted and moved on. Because there was a question asked about how many people the Doctor killed during the war with the Daleks. 10 didn't know. 11 knew the exact number. So you have that wonderful nuance and really full universe building across those multiple iterations. And this just goes to show the issues with the current Doctor Who that's being produced now and over the last few years. The writers have gone down the toilet so fucking quick.
I can give them credit. They're trying to make old style Who. Because old style Who did not have the overarching grand scheme stories. They were more individualized, maybe part of a series, some, general same setting, but there was not the big story that was in there for Tennant and Smith and Capaldi. So they're going back a little bit more to the older style, which is still good. One individualized. We've got a new monster we've got to take down. We've never seen it before. Yay! But they're trying to sprinkle. They're trying to sprinkle in too much modern messaging without adding in a little bit of overarching stories. I don't know. I think there's the modern messaging on it. Every story does not need to have that big of a purpose.
Yeah.
If you make every one of them pointed of, I'm pointing at one thing in society, those episodes are okay. I am fine with those episodes. We're going to write this episode. It's going to be about X subject because we want to point out the social injustice or the personal injustice or the bigotry, hatred, racism, whatever of this one topic. Individual stories like that are okay. I'm fine with that. But when it's every single episode, you feel like you're getting preached at.
Oh, completely. That is... And I would even say that preachy nature actually does go towards the tail end of Capaldi, too. There was a dramatic change from Smith to Capaldi that I recognized it. I understood that this is what happens because you had those changes before. Like, there was... By the characters, when you look at it, from Eccleston to Tennant, there was a change. From Tennant to Smith, there was a change. Now that we're going from Smith to Capaldi, I expected a change. But what started creeping in was the writing staff was getting thinned out and changed out, and the quality was starting to slip. It wasn't as noticeable during the first two seasons with Capaldi, but then it started to go even further down. And that's where it definitely went to more preachy on, well, we're going to talk about this subject. We want this to be the message, and we're going to set it here. Instead of having it all, having those connections make sense, it really was forced. You didn't get that sense of those situations being forced in the earlier iterations, especially during Tennant and Eccleston's time period. There were still political messages in Doctor Who then when you look at the episodes, but it wasn't as browbeating as it is now. Mm-hmm. Question from Leon in the chat. Would Warhammer 40k also count as possible sci-fi to bring into this? I would say outer fringe at this point for one main reason. Warhammer 40k is predominantly a gaming and entertainment IP, while it does have the novelizations and the expanded universe to go with it. Once they start doing movies and or a TV show or something of the sort, like the Astartes project that is going on, the more media there is of that nature that is more properly and consistently produced, then it would be entirely in the conversation. Similar to someone compared it to StarCraft. Same thing. You do have novelizations, you do have expanded universe off of that, but it is still a gaming type of IP, not a full-on visual entertainment, but not far off.
So before we move off of the Doctor's subject entirely, if you were to sit down with somebody who's never watched any Doctor Who, and you were telling them to start with Eccleston and so on and so forth, you know, and they said they've only really watched, as far as sci-fi goes, the DC television universe, the Arrowverse, basically. Would you agree with the assessment that Eccleston is the Arrow, is the Oliver Queen, and Smith is more of the Barry Allen, the Flash, and Tennant would be more of the Rip Taylor from or whatever his name is from, he played Rory with Matt Smith, but he would be more the Tennant character.
I could see that as a way to compare it, to try to explain to them those nuances. But I think it would throw their mind for a loop when you say, and by the way, it's the same person, just with a regeneration and a reinvigoration that takes place.
Yeah, that would definitely would throw them for the loop. But I mean, like, just as far as like the character mentality, you know, you can see with Eccleston, like you were saying before, he was shut off because he's the post-war Doctor. Oliver Queen suffered horrendous 5 years on and off Leanne Yu. Well, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So on and so forth. And then Barry Allen is this quirky kid who's trying to make sense of the world. And then all of a sudden gets his superpowers. You know, Matt Smith is quirky and trying to fit himself in the first season or so into being the Doctor. You know, he understands he's the Doctor, but it's just like, how do I make this work? You know?
Yeah, and especially when you look at the first episode, he really is trying to not just reiterate what Tennant did, but at the same time, there was, especially through Smith and the early Capaldi, there was a branch of sayings that ended up coming around, and you could even go back and watch Doctor Who in reverse order and can see that this still holds true even into Classic Who. And Furball, I think you know where I'm going with this one. Hey 11, your 10 is showing.
Yeah.
Because you had those moments where mannerisms that were established by one version of the Doctor are occasionally pop up in the following editions, and it is a wonderful built-in nod to the prior iteration of the character and that actor who played him. Because there were times where 10 was very sassy, and it was, hey 10, your 9 is showing, because that's what 9 ended up being known for.
Yeah.
That sarcastic, that sass attitude that he would give at times. And I think that's part of why I really enjoyed Eccleston, because that's me. If we're having a conversation, Furball, how many times have I given you a sarcastic response just because?
Well, within the last 2 hours, like several of them.
It's hard to keep up with them.
It's that's where each of us end up identifying with a version of the Doctor because of those traits, those identifying marks that we can associate with. Is like, if you are genuinely honest with your self-analysis, you will be able to notice these things, and you'll notice common threads between all of the fictional characters that you enjoy and follow, that there are common threads, and it's generally because I've noticed this in myself, or this is a part of myself that I've noticed I need to be better at.
One other thing for Who, before we move on to the next series, something that I adore is River. And the way that they wrote and the forethought that they put into this storyline, that their paths are reversed. And at some point, I really want to watch them in reverse order. So if anybody is not aware, River Song, one of the characters, is also a time traveler, and because of various reasons, and has known the Doctor, but they are meeting each other in opposite directions. So there is one time where she's known him for many years, but he's never met her. And there's another time where
The library.
Yeah, I was going to say the library.
Yeah, the library is the one, but several episodes later, so we've met River in the library, and then several episodes later of River, which is 2 years, because she's not in every single one. She looks at him, and I think it might have been Amy that was talking to her, and just this look on River's face, it was of despair. And they asked why, and the comment was, because I know at some point I'm going to meet him again, and he's going to have no clue who I am. Because, yeah, so not necessarily reverse, but crisscrossed, yeah. And at that episode, it's the first time he's meeting her, but they have had years of interactions together. And it's heartbreaking to see it that way, and then 2 Doctors later, you see it in reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Capaldi, you see that difference where he's known her for so long, but this is essentially her beginning of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they end up working that across the room, it really does show when you have a creative team that actually cares about the product that's being there and what has been the groundwork that has been laid before, you get these threads of continuity between that some people will recognize as internally consistent, despite from an outward appearance being disjointed. Oh, S2000 GT is starting a call that actually, yeah, that was the call in the Capaldi era. When Moffat was on his way out, or even towards the end of Moffat, bring back Russell T Davies. And I think at one point Davies said he would be open to coming back, but then there were other things that the BBC was doing, and his tune changed quick.
Okay, I'm trying to look this up because I never heard that before, but where did I see that?
Have you guys seen the British sitcom series Coupling?
No.
No, I haven't.
Think of it as like Friends, but extremely naughty. Like, the opening sequence is 2 different scenes of 2 guys talking and 2 girls talking, and it's like jumping back and forth, and they're both groups are bitching about whatever their last date was, and then at the end of the conversation, the guy looks at his friend and says, "One swallow doesn't make her my fiance." And then they jump over to the girls, and the girls, "One swallow doesn't make him my boyfriend." Moffat is the writer of that series.
Interesting.
It is hilarious. And the main character, the male protagonist, is the Commodore from the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I saw Rodent's comment. Not many people know that Rowan Atkinson was once the Doctor. In 1999, is Doctor Who: The Curse of the Fatal Death comic relief.
Yeah, I've seen clips from
like,
that.
Like, I know I've seen him doing the Doctor thing, but I'm like, was that really?
Yeah.
Was that really the thing? So sitting here going through his IMDb, I'm like, I'm not seeing anything. Finally see it. I'm like, oh yeah.
So, now with the other series, so where would your leanings go?
Other leanings for others.
So
other
non-Trek.
Non-Trek. I gave Star Trek Stargate a lot of attention early on, but then I just kind of lost favor with it. I was big into the 90s Babylon 5 or 80s Babylon 5?
Well, Babylon 5 was mid late 90s. It started shortly after DS9.
Yeah, I was watching that because watching DS9, then the next day you watch it over on the UPN, I think it was at the time, here in Washington. The Babylon 5. Never really got into Battlestar Galactica, but I tried. I was in between the old one and the new one when I was starting to get interested into a lot of other sci-fi.
Oh, that was actually an interesting announcement on my phone. I've been followed by Rogal Dorn.
Okay. I know who that is.
Me either.
That's the point.
Oh, okay. So, all right, Leon, you're going to be happy about this one. So, we'd mentioned Warhammer 40K and the question of that and where it would fit in. Warhammer 40K does have its roots of what would humanity be like in the 41st millennia from now. So the year 40,000, what is a realistic expectation of what humanity is doing, where it's gone, and what's happened? And what ends up, what they've gone with is that there's a character known as the Emperor of Mankind, who in the late 20,000s into 30,000s, yes, guy is very long-lived. He is seen as a possible, what they call perpetual, meaning he really can't die. He was created by the last of the shaman of Earth, sacrificing themselves to create one being from their collective consciousness. And it ends up being this master figure that lives throughout the centuries, observing mankind until he picks a moment and says, fuck this shit, I'm making myself known, and I am going to lead not just this nation, not just this tribe, but all of humanity. And he starts with the unification wars of Earth. In order to do that, he ends up creating a augment of humans known as the Thunder Warriors, who are a precursor to the Legio Astartes, who, depending on the comparisons and figures you look at, think superhumans tenfold, and standing anywhere from 7 to 8 feet tall, not in their power armor, using weapons and firearms that, if you were to try to fire, the recoil alone would rip you in half.
Ow.
Think about a handheld howitzer with a high explosive round. So, so with all of that, the Emperor of Mankind, after the Thunder Warriors, ended up using that knowledge and that experience, and after unifying the Earth, wants to unify the farther flung colonies of humanity under his banner, and that's where the Great Crusade comes in, which ends up it's very much, think Roman Empire, but in the cosmos. You actually end up having a lot of Romanesque terminology. It's not the Legion, it's the Legio. You have the Astartes, who are the overgrown, enhanced, specialized for war type, but there's an even bigger version of humans called the Primarchs, who are direct genetic descendants of the Emperor, but ended up being raised essentially on their own and on different worlds, and they all ended up pretty much conquering the worlds that they grew up on after their initial formation in the laboratory on Terra, on Earth. And each one is seen as a facet, a mirror of one part of the personality and psyche of the Emperor of Mankind. His whole thing was getting away from religion, being very secular, very logical, and intelligent. There's the segment of reality called the Immaterium. Think subspace in the middle of a rave where everyone's on a triple dose of MDMA, LSD, and cocaine. Yeah, the lore that has been crafted in this is really in-depth, really thought out, and has grown so well that it is really interesting. And it started out from a tabletop game with miniatures. So there is a lot of that. So getting back to that whole thing with the person following me, Rogel Dorn was one of the Primarchs who remained loyal to the Emperor during a time period that took place in the 30,000s called the Horus Heresy, where the gods of chaos had influenced a number of the Primarchs to rebel against the Emperor. But in order to do a proper explanation and analysis of the full lore that I've just come across so far on 40K, hours and hours and hours. But I noticed the avatar that account is using is actually looks to be a fan of Alpha Bravusa, who has a series called If the Emperor Had Text-to-Speech. Because in 40K, right? In the 40K, the Emperor is biologically dead, but his psyche is still being supported while his body is literally connected to and piped into the Golden Throne. And so the premise behind that series is, if the psyche, if the actual living portion of the God Emperor had access to a messaging system where he could do text-to-speech, so he sends a text message and it's read out and heard by whoever's around the Golden Throne, what would the Emperor think of what has happened to his Imperium since the end of the Horus Heresy to where it is in current 40k lore? Because this Emperor wanted nothing to do with religion. In the time period of 40k, the Imperium is still surviving because of the veneration of the Emperor as a god. Which, in 10,000 years prior, making that claim, making that your stance, was an immediate death sentence.
Death isn't good.
Ooh. Carrie B. Dis. Best Primarch? Conrad Kurz. Fight me. Yeah, I wouldn't go with Conrad. I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're talking all-round Primarch, maybe. But another topic for another time. Okay, so got all of that now. So, but as for... So, you had mentioned Babylon 5, but couldn't really get into it. Where would you say your alternate loyalties lie there, Jay?
I'm wondering what you mean by alternate loyalties. Like, what?
So, favorite sci-fi that is not Star Trek.
How about favorite sci-fi that's not Star Trek or Star Wars? Just so that way I can't cop out to the Star Wars.
Okay, that works too.
Because I mean, and to be fair to the Star Wars universe, The Mandalorian actually, as far as TV sci-fi goes, I could probably rank up there pretty high with some of the Star Treks. You know what I mean? So, but too short, needs more episodes. Sci-fi that's not Star Trek, Star Wars. Favorite? I would probably have to go with what I've seen of Doctor Who, just because of it's just really great content. And that first season of Matt Smith is what I've been having troubles getting through. Although I'm looking at IMDb, and now that I think about it, classic Twilight Zone would be a good one. But it just the whole thing with the Matt Smith is it's too much of a shock of the quirkiness of him compared to David Tennant trying to have the Doctor forget what he had done in the past. You know, it's like, oh, I remember. Ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said those types of things. That's the kind of the feel I get between the two Doctors. So,
Matt Smith, like I said earlier, does develop serious bonds, though. Which is
he does. Yes, and don't get me wrong. Like I said, I'm only literally like halfway through the first season, and it just part of it I think was I was just literally binging Doctor Who as much as I could, and I didn't really take a break from it. So if I were able to get back into it, and unfortunately Amazon Prime failed me, and I can't seem to access that site that I sent you on my phone. So
yeah, I was halfway through the final season with Amy and Rory, and we were watching it on New Year's Eve, and at midnight, Amazon lost Prime rights to stream it as part of the Prime package. And I'd read online that there were actually people that were mid-episode
that got cut off.
Stopped. Yeah. And it just stopped. Now, do you know where it's going now? Do you know who has the rights to it now?
Hulu?
YouTube. Or not YouTube, HBO. with their new service that's not even out yet. But they obtained the rights to Doctor Who and a shitload of other stuff. Doctor Who started on 1 January, but their streaming service isn't going to be available until the 27th of May. So for 5 months, no place you could stream Who as part of the package other than purchasing it.
All right, so don't mind me. I'm just saving things because for those who are wondering, yes, we are going to get to mine here momentarily. But I made it a point to not have mine showing on screen. So
I would throw in there every Labor Day weekend. I'm down for taking the time off to do a Red Dwarf marathon. So.
And the Muskegon has a good question. If you're going Twilight Zone or Outer Limits is a must. Well, what about the Scary Door?
Or
just come on, somebody tell me you know where the Scary Door is from.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
That's the Twilight Zone version from Futurama.
Yeah.
You're about to enter the Scary Door.
I would say this. We're going down those. Those are all well and good. But there's just... There's something lacking in a lot of these areas that when I started thinking about this, because this was something that I actually thought about a little bit earlier in the week, and as just the questions of what could we talk about that is not Trek, that way we can have more of the engagement that I've loved seeing in the chat today. And it came down to, well, what other sci-fi franchises are there out there, and what about their loyalties? And there were two that came to mind as my preferred, what I enjoyed and have associated with in a way that doesn't get a lot of traction in places, doesn't get a lot of things that are actually brought up and mentioned. I'm going to start by saying what the runner-up was. And yes, I will say, the only good bug is a dead bug.
Ooh. That's the first date movie for me and my wife. I've never read the book, though.
The book is good in its own right, because it has, especially with us being former military, it does have a rather interesting premise, and the book far better than the movie. The movie really does gloss over a lot of the foundational stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've heard.
Yeah. So you have it. You have the movie I found entertaining, and it's actually what opened me to it, and it does have a good premise in that when you have a society that is decaying, the people who have sworn an allegiance, who have made a vow to be the ones to sacrifice themselves if need be in defense of that way of life, kind of shows that those people are badass and are the type that probably should have more of a voice in decisions that are being made. So what you end up having in the Starship Troopers universe is the veterans take over. The veterans become the government. And not just the government, but you also have the military being everything at that point. Now, that doesn't say that regular citizens who don't serve are relegated to what would be seen as a second or third class citizenship. No. It's just there are certain restrictions that they have other criteria to meet in order to be able to do what most citizens are able to do freely. And the way you become a citizen is through service. Or to say it more appropriately, service guarantees citizenship, and only citizens can vote. They vote for who's in the governing bodies. They vote on all those matters of influence, both domestically on Earth, and also they are a galactic group. They have outposts on other worlds and FTL travel. So you have that aspect, and with my family history in the military, my personal experience in the military, I can kind of jump on board with the idea that having some sort of civil service background, not necessarily military, but civil service background, in my opinion, should be a requirement for state and federal elected office. So
I don't know. That's a deeper conversation to have than for a Trek series or for a sci-fi series. That would be a different conversation. I don't know. I haven't thought too much. I agree with the sentiment. I don't know if I agree with the implementation and impact of it. I don't know.
And that's where it gets interesting, is how it's like kind of like with Star Trek, in that a lot of the changes that we see, it's not a simple transition. It's not, even in a prolonged sense, we would not be able to, in even give it 250 years, we would not be able to progress from where we currently are today to the societal and governmental setup that they have shown in Star Trek. If you've noticed, what do they use as the catalyst for the change?
War?
World War III, where 70 to 80% of the world's population gone. Now, that number is a bit extreme, but there is merit to the thought there that that sort of drastic change in a relatively short amount of time would take a drastic occurrence like that to be the catalyst for the change. Now, I'm not saying that I would enjoy seeing that sort of catastrophic conflict happen, but I recognize that humanity is fucking stubborn.
What? No, we're not stubborn, not at all.
Ugly German Truth says, would you count doctors and nurses as civil service? Healthcare, police, fire, ambulatory, military, any of those types of disciplines where you are foregoing your comfort of life in defense, support, and propagation of society and the people around you. That's my view of it.
What about Ender's Game then?
That one was up there, but top two, it just got eked out by these other two because I got into these before I got into Ender's Game and everything, which that movie could have been better, but it was still damn good for what it was.
Yeah.
Because, and here's the thing, mentioning that actually is a wonderful precursor to what actually ranked as my number one, because we have a similar vein there. A number of exceptional books are the foundation of this sci-fi series. It has been put to film. The film was okay.
Harry Potter?
The film...
Harry Potter?
Nope. The film was okay, but could have been better.
Wait a second.
I just posted it in chat.
I don't know if you're going... Okay, yeah. I've got another one to talk about next then. Go for it.
Dune.
Never watched any of them.
I watched the movie. I never read the books. I just haven't had the time to try and hunt down the books to read. So stop playing with your spring there, Furball.
It's actually the magnet. I'm playing with my magnet underneath the table.
And it's moving the mic?
No, it attached to the table and made everything jump.
Muskegon, I'm aware of Heinlein and his history as being in the Navy. It actually explains a lot of his views that he put into that book. But see, Mark Beiser, that's exactly what I'm saying. The 1984 movie Dune could have been so much better. And this is where there is an internal conflict within the Dune fandom. And it really does center around, do you enjoy the 1984 movie better? Or the miniseries that the Sci-Fi Channel did? Here's my stance on it. The 1984 movie was a better viewing experience in that it was a more watchable movie. The miniseries gets its bonus points because it was damn near verbatim the books put to screen. The miniseries that Sci-Fi did of the entire, to the point that they got to in the Dune saga, was the most accurate version going from book to screen. I will give them that. However, not exactly the best kind of viewing experience. Still good in its own right, but for watching experience, I preferred the movie.
I have never Duned anything. Not a book, not a TV series, not a movie.
Yes, Patrick Stewart and Sting were in the 1984 movie, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can watch the current season of Doctor Who if I wanted to. I have BBC America.
So another series that you'd meant, or that got brought to mind, that is something that has not been expanded upon, could not be expanded upon, but I think would be amazing and fun. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Ooh, that is a good
That's
call.
a universe. Because that's a universe. That's not just... There are 5 books in that trilogy, and they're all amazing. And they expand upon an entire universe. And the movie was utter horseshit, other than the fact that Severus Snape was the best robot ever.
Yeah.
Yes.
The British TV series was a little better. It was decent. At least it stuck along the line of what the actual storyline was. The movie was utter garbage. But the books, I'd say about every 2 years, I read the entire series. I've got the Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide, all 5 in one bound book, and I love it.
So I just pulled up Dune 1984, Jared, just because it's been so long since I've actually watched it. I forgot Max von Sydow was in there too.
Yep, is Keynes.
Yep.
See, and that's the thing, is with Dune, to me, it ends up as #1 non-Star Trek sci-fi series that I enjoy, partly because I ended up literally stumbling across the first 2 Dune books in the library at my high school, of an inner city high school in New England.
How inner city is that, really?
Oh, Caucasian was a minority in that school.
I was kidding.
No, and it was not a book I expected to find in our library here in this state that I'm actually back in now. Had I found that book a year prior at the library in Connecticut at the school that I went to there, that would not have surprised me. But so I ended up picking up both of them and started reading. Now, I will say this for anyone who's not experienced with reading the works of Frank Herbert. The books do start off slow. The first chunk of the book is a lot of setup, a lot of subterfuge, a lot of little interplay, and setting the stage while players are moving around. And that's part of the beauty of it, because once those plans start paying off, the pacing of the book, the way it's written, actually stays the same, but your desire to read it increases because, holy shit, that just happened. Wait, now what? Okay, now this is... Holy shit, and it just keeps you going. It's that little drag, it's that little bit of a hint, it's that little bit of temptation, and then once you're hooked with that yank, you're off to the races, and then the book ends. And then it picks up into the next one. And you
does the same thing over and over.
But you also have a gap between the books. You don't have a linear, okay, book 1 ended, now you go right into book 2. No. That's not how he did it. He left chunks of time in between. So that pacing, that slow build, that slow burn at the beginning of the book has a reason to it, because there's not outright alliteration of, well, this is what you missed in the interim. It's all hinted. It's very politically minded in that sense of, you have competing factions all trying to do what's best for their interest while feigning also working with their allies, on top of having common goals and common targets to it all too. It really is a good read and judge and evaluation of the human psyche when it comes to what is and is not constitutional of power and its utilization. Oh, we need to agree on which ornithopter is best, though, and if they really should have the proper wings as described in the books. You know, that we could have... I will give the sci-fi one credit for being more accurate for most of the stuff. I still prefer the Twisted Hulk of... that is the Guild Navigator that was shown in 84 versus the bat-like creature that they showed in the miniseries. But with Dune, you have that bit, but then you also have technology. You also have, what kind of effect would a narcotic from another world have on human physiology? So yeah, it can seem like fantasy, but when you look at the actual history behind it and you go past the original 6 books that Frank Herbert wrote and go into the expanded universe that his son had completed and has worked on from his father's original notes of the points of what is going on in the universe, the spice melange is really interesting when you look at the application and the effect that it has on the human body, the longevity, and also what it can do with the brain, and then interactions between the person and the world around them. Have I seen the released images of the new Dune movie? Are you excited for it? I have tempered expectations. I really want the movie to be done well and done right, but I'm cautiously optimistic because of Hollywood in general's propensity for screwing shit up lately. But I want it to be good. I want it to be that blend between the sci-fi miniseries where it is accurate to the story that is being portrayed in the books, while also being an enjoyable viewing experience like the 1984 movie by comparison. I want it to be the best of both worlds in that aspect. And yeah. LRJ88 points out a good thing, though, of what I've seen in the released views. They wouldn't be wearing armor on Caladan. The in-universe, in Dune, the only place where the personal Holtzman shields are not a viable option are on Arrakis because of the dry air and constant static charge. Wearing a personal shield on Arrakis makes you even more attractive to a worm than a thumper. And yes, some of the objects are actually named quite literally what you think they would be. A thumper is a device you put in the ground and it literally rhythmically thumps as an attractor for the sandworms.
Not exactly sci-fi related, but I just have to share my response to this tweet.
Okay, so what did Teddy say? See you there. Scroll down.
You see that I'm tagged here?
Yep. All right, you're going to have to read the text.
Is that why I have the link to the show? Wait, I wasn't supposed to say that, was I? Not that I actually have a link to the show, but you know, how could you not? How could I not?
Yeah, exactly. You know
All
what?
right, I'm gonna have to dip out in just a little bit to start making supper.
Yeah, no, it's actually about the good time because I'm in similar boat. Now, for the chat from Rodent No Last Name, it should be an HBO short series. That would probably be the better way to go about Dune.
Yeah, that would be. I thought HBO was trying to do that in the mid 2000s to the early 2010s.
Early 2000s. Before it went to sci-fi, HBO was trying to do it.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah, well, no, not at that time. Not until, I would say, had it been 2010, 2015, and there not been the sci-fi series, if HBO at that point had wanted to do something with the franchise, then I think it would have happened, and I think it would have been well done, because let's look at how the first 5 seasons, the true 5 seasons of Game of Thrones was.
Oh yeah.
It was
I'm
actually
binging that, by the way.
Yeah, it was actually a really good series, and it was actually as accurate as they could make it to the books. I mean, you can't have all the storylines and all the characters in that series. George, I can see why your books sometimes take a while to write, because holy fuck do you have a character for everything, and then you kill him. But
he has a character for everything. He has a storyline, an involved storyline for that character. Then he has to kill it off. And you can't just say, oh, now he's dead. It's got to be some like left field death that you're not expecting, because why not? That is a quality writer right there.
yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. Part of the influence that he used for the series was the War of the Roses. I mean, the English Civil War, when you really look at it, it really was. You had
The first English Civil War.
Yeah, you have a lot of people dropping off for seemingly no reason.
The Princes in the Tower.
Yeah, so what George did to go from a historic reference to making his own fantasy series and universe around it with shit that made no sense, but it kind of worked in the way that he set it up, really was a masterful thing that he did. And the fact that he uses a 1980s vintage computer to type it.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that is because the names and some of the languages that he uses and is made and typed up, he would have red marks all over it if he tried to write it on a word processor today.
Oh, yeah. Where is it? I was just thinking about Star Wars and how sometimes you get some crossover on things, especially in the newer animated TV shows that they have. They actually had a doctor in one of their series, Star Wars Rebels. They had Tom Baker in as the voice of the Bendu, who's basically the equivalent of the Gray Jedi code. There's no light or dark only. There's balance in the Force type of thing.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, with that, we have been going for a bit, and it is coming up on time for consumption of mass quantities here on the right side of the world.
The East Coast. Yeah.
Time to go spark up the Barbie.
Yeah. And with that, we are going to head out, but to end it all, I will have to say that don't disparage any of the other franchises simply because you don't enjoy or don't like it. Every sci-fi franchise has its warts, has its drawbacks. If it's enjoyable and if it's not completely trash of a setup, 50 Shades, then go ahead and just let the people who enjoy it enjoy it. And, Furball, do you have any parting thoughts?
No, I love science fiction. It is an escape from reality where you can try and imagine either a better or a worse place than your current position, so you can wallow in the misery with them, point and laugh at them, or desire for what your future could be. So that's kind of where I put sci-fi for myself. It's a good outlet. Find the niche that you like, enjoy it, and become a nerd about it. And then eventually someday maybe one of your friends will start up a YouTube stream and you can just bullshit about it every other week.
Hey, you never know what happens.
Exactly.
Jay, any last thoughts?
Just sci-fi and science fantasy, or even fantasy itself in it all. There's just so many great stories to be heard out there. Not everyone's for you. So take what you like and just leave the others alone. You don't have to say one is better than the other. Although we all know Star Wars is better than Star Trek. By far, it's the most superior of them all. But, But no, in all seriousness, we all can nerd about whatever we want. I mean, that's why Comic-Cons and various cons are popular, because there's so much different opinion and none of it's more correct than the other. So
I don't know that it has certainly been fun. We will have to give Zegerman a hard time for missing out on this one especially, but don't worry, we have his favorite generational show to go over in 2 weeks' time. So go ahead and come on over for that, where we're not going to take it easy on that movie. Sorry, I can see it now. We're not gonna be easy on that piece of film.
You're gonna make me watch it like 3 times. I've got to watch it to watch it. Then I've got to watch it to take notes. Then I've got to watch it to take freaking screenshots for the show.
You don't think I'm gonna be watching it a couple of times too this upcoming week for similar reasons?
Do we get to talk about the deleted scenes?
Yes, I am going to be mentioning those. Those are going to be a topic because they deserve to be in this, because it just goes to show what they put into it, or rather what they didn't put into it from an effort standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want me to integrate the deleted scenes to where they should have been in the show, or add them at the end as its own individual bitch session?
You know what? Let's
think about
and
that.
You know what? Yeah, we'll talk about that throughout the week and figure that out. Until then, everyone enjoy. Go ahead and nerd out in any way, shape, or form that you enjoy. And just remember, if you're going to blame anyone for anything, there are only 2 people you can blame: Lorgar and Yui.